The transition towards sustainable and inclusive urban mobility is a priority on the agenda of many cities around the world. The goal of these policies is to ensure that everyone has access to daily goods and services through sustainable forms of mobility. The purpose of these policies is to create the conditions to reduce people's dependence on cars for their daily travels. This is because the intensive use of cars generates negative impacts on the environment, health, infrastructure efficiency, and the use of public spaces, compromising their accessibility and quality. From these experiences, it becomes clear that cities need not only different cars, electric, hydrogen-powered, driverless, shared. Cities also need fewer cars. In this lesson, we will provide an overview of the policies that have been implemented to achieve a model of sustainable and inclusive urban mobility, both in urban areas and in low-density contexts where the use of cars is often necessary. To achieve a model of sustainable and inclusive mobility, a paradigm shift is needed, one that can enhance and integrate already sustainable mobility options such as active mobility, that is, walking and cycling, as well as shared mobility and public transportation. The data on mobility in Italy confirm that we are still far from reaching the goal set by the PNRR, which aims to shift 10% of car trips to collective transport by 2030. In fact, the car still plays a dominant role in daily travels. In the first half of 2024, 63% of all trips in Italy were made by car, while the modal share of local public transport in urban areas is only 8.6%, and it reaches 17.6% only in urban centers with more than 250,000 inhabitants. However, most daily trips cover distances of less than 10 kilometers. This means that these journeys could potentially be made by walking, cycling, or by using public transport. Enhancing these forms of mobility means placing at the center of policies accessibility by proximity, which is a key concept for rethinking urban mobility. But what is accessibility? Accessibility depends on the supply and functioning of transport systems, as well as on contextual conditions as equipment, density, and diversity of functions. At the same time, accessibility reflects the real possibilities or difficulties each person faces in taking advantage of the opportunities offered by a territory and thus in participating in its social and economic life. For this reason, accessibility is an essential condition for ensuring social inclusion. Accessibility can be guaranteed not only through physical mobility but also thanks to digital connections and proximity. Proximity in particular refers to the ease of accessing resources and services when they are physically close and easily reachable. Accessibility by proximity is therefore based on a distribution of services that can be accessed through active mobility, which is necessary to reduce the intensity and the environmental, social, and spatial impact of forms of hypermobility that are often not chosen but suffered, as well as interventions in favor of active mobility or alternatives mobility to the car use. Within this framework, several urban planning models can be found, such as the 15-minute city proposed by Carlos Moreno and the 20-minute neighborhoods featured in the strategic plans of Portland and Melbourne. To implement this model based on accessibility by proximity, it is necessary to consider 4 key aspects. Proximity to the main everyday services, which should be considered not only in terms of physical distance measured by time thresholds, but also based on the quality and safety of pedestrian and cycling paths, as well as their inclusivity, since not everyone has the same abilities and attitudes. Density of functions, activities, relationships, and interactions, which not only enliven the neighborhood, but also make the services offered and the public transport economically sustainable. Diversity in land uses, which broadens the range of choices and opportunities available at the neighborhood scale, as well as cultural and social diversity, which helps prevent gentrification and the displacement of vulnerable populations. Finally, digitalization as an opportunity to access and use digital devices for e-commerce, remote working, and above all for accessing digital transportation platforms such as mobility as a service, which optimize integration and modal choice among different means of transport. The implementation of these policies also depends on the availability of analytical tools to measure accessibility by proximity and to provide a regulatory framework, that is, one capable of guiding intervention choices and priorities. Among these is the Inclusive Accessibility by Proximity Index, which measures accessibility by proximity to essential services, taking into account the actual and perceived conditions and quality of pedestrian and cycling routes, as well as public spaces, including for people with reduced mobility. It also identifies intervention priorities to improve access to essential services and ensure their equitable distribution. In Italy as well, several cities have promoted policies in favor of accessibility by proximity, implementing measures such as reducing space and speed for vehicles in favor of pedestrians and cyclists. For example, the City 30s initiative in Bologna and school plazas in Turin, Milan, Bologna, Cagliari, and Genoa. Reorganizing urban welfare spaces to strengthen geographies of proximity and meeting places within neighborhoods, such as the Neighborhoods Atlas in Milan and Bergamo. To support forms of proximity-based economy with investments for both profit and non-profit activities, the neighborhood scale, such as investments in community cooperatives and microcredit for small businesses in the neighborhoods of Palermo. Offering community hubs equipped with services for families, young people, and the elderly, fostering new community relationships such as neighborhood houses in Bologna and new co-working spaces like in the Bari Open Space project, as well as home delivery services that ensure fair wages for riders and provide them with environmentally sustainable vehicles, such as ethical deliveries in Bologna. However, there are contexts in which promoting accessibility by proximity policies proves to be much more challenging. This is the case in peri-urban contexts, mountain areas, or low-density territories, where using a car is often a necessity due to the limited availability of alternative mobility solutions. This situation particularly disadvantages certain groups of residents, such as teenagers or people without a driver's license or a car, thereby reducing their opportunities for mobility and participation in social life. In these areas, accessibility by proximity needs to be reconsidered using different metrics. It can be understood as a resource co-produced by a community that shares mobility needs and solutions for reaching places and daily activities. It is built through initiatives that promote multimodality because here car use must be integrated with other forms of transport and more active services such as public transportation, school transport, postal and delivery services, and also by creating multi-service hubs. These are well-connected and accessible spaces where large-scale services can be concentrated.